basically click on this X mark for the ones that you do not want. You're telling Splunk that, okay, don't include this in the extraction. So I'm clicking on this. Okay, Splunk did this. Now, let's look at all the usernames. This seems to be correct. App server, test user, MongoDB. So the event that I excluded happens to be the one with the actual failed password, not the invalid user, right? If you pay close attention to this. This is what I want, the invalid usernames. Okay, so now this looks good. Click on the username, and you can see all the usernames here. As you can validate this. Awesome. So now click on next. And then this is just a review field. You can open up the permission here, meaning this field extraction should be used just for you or for anyone in your group. Again, we won't get into the security, but for now, let's leave it as owner. Finish. Okay. I'm going to click on, I'm going to bring up the search again and then see if my search worked, if my field extraction worked. Okay, so I'm looking at failed password. Is the username there? There it is. Username. Now I have all the usernames extracted. So from now onwards, see, I can easily use the power of stats command, or I can even do top username. Okay, so now I know someone is using the administrator username, DB, and so on. Those are invalid users, mailman, IRC, blah, blah, blah. With the top, you can do a limit equal to, let's say, 20. So give me the top 20, and then it shows up like this. Now, as usual, you can go to visualization tab. Pie chart is fine, but if you want to use, let's say, a horizontal chart, you can use it that way too. Horizontal bar chart. If you want to show the values here, you can click on format, and then the show data values on. Okay, so that's basically, if you want to show the values, the numbers too, it shows up here. And then it also shows a table underneath. Okay. All right, so I think the maximum is 10 for the value to show up here in this graph. So I like it this way to show the name also right in the graph. Okay, so now again, it took me like a couple of minutes for me to extract the username and then create a report out of it. And imagine how useful this will be to have such a report, as especially on the security context. Okay, great. Let's take some questions and take a 5-minute break this time. And then we will go into using, we'll go deeper into eval stats and Timechart, followed by creating reports and dashboards. Okay, the next segment is going to be critical. All right, so let's see if you have any questions here. Just to have more time learning. Stats is the most useful aggregation command, period. Okay, it's going to transform the data that comes off of the indexes into the way you want. You can apply mathematical functions, that's primarily it, but you can also apply a lot of transformations using stats command and then show it as results. And we'll see examples of that. And we already did see, how average can be used and sum can be used. We'll go a little bit deeper into that. Well, I think we didn't see sum. We did see average, max, and min. Top and rar, I think we may have seen the top command already. It essentially finds the most common values of a given field, meaning which values appear the most in the search results. That's the top ones, right? For example, if you're showing results of all errors, and then let's say there is a field called user ID, okay? You can say top user ID. So then what you have done is essentially found out the users that are encountering the most errors, right? This can be useful. That's where top is used. Rar is the inverse of top, it finds the least common values. And depends on your use case, that may be useful as well. Now the show perk equal to F, sometimes it's useful because I don't know if you guys noticed. Let me switch my screen. It shows the percentage with the top comment. Right? Let me use top username. Okay, it shows 4% is from administrator. Now, when you actually show this in a report or dashboard, you may not necessarily want the percentage column in there. So there's an easy way to get rid of it. It's show perk equal to F. Okay, and then the count field can also be renamed if you want. So that's called count field. Okay, so now this is much more useful. Number of failed login attempts is this. Okay. All right. Now eval, again, it's if there is a competition between eval and stats, that's going to be a great one. I'll probably have to go with eval because eval is actually going to create a new field for you based on the values in your raw in your search results, right? Lots of arithmetic operations you can use, and string functions, for instance, you can encode and decode uppercase, lowercase, all the usual string transformation, split it. You will expect from a language. Okay, the time chart. So chart is another variant of statistical or transforming command rather. It's going to be very, very useful when it comes to plotting data against time. And obviously that's super important when you're, for instance, troubleshooting a trend, right? When did the error start? And when did it start to go down? Things like that. Those things you need to plot it against time. That's where time chart come into play, right? The only problem with the time chart is you can only split the data by one field. You cannot do that beyond one field. That's where stats come into play. So you can with stats you can split that. You can split it into any number of fields as you want. With the time chart, the time is always going to be the x-axis, and then you can split the data by one field, and we'll see an example of that. Okay, so let's dive right into demo, and we'll start running these commands, and then it will start to make sense to you. Okay. All right, so the first one we're going to be running, let me make sure the screen is still sharing. Okay. Okay, so eval. Okay, let's go with eval. So now eval, like I said, is going to create a new field. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's take a very basic example. Now I have some search here, right? I'm just restricting to the source type of secure tool. Let's say eval, my field. I'm just going to give some value. This is totally useless. Okay, what am I doing here? I'm creating a new field and assigning the value, some random value. But what does Splunk do? That's what I want you to pay attention to. So it creates this field, my field, and adds it to each event. Okay? Each event. And then on the left side, if you click on my field, there is only one unique value, and it appears in all the events. Okay? So that's what eval does. It adds a new field, and then this value, this is where the computation comes into play. You have many functions that you can use to derive this value. Okay, let's see one useful example, little bit more useful example. Let's go to access_combine cookie. If you paid attention, this is what I had in my slide. We have bytes here, right? What if you want to show kilobytes instead of just regular bytes? You can easily create a new field, eval k bytes equal to bytes divided by 1024, right? So this is a mathematical operation. So you can use plus, minus, and all those with eval. Very simple, straightforward. Let's see what Splunk does. So it has added kilobytes field in each event, and then it actually calculated the value. Okay, this is happening at run search time. So let's double check to make sure the value is correct by expanding an event. So byte is 2252, k bytes is 2.19. That sounds about right. Let's look at another one. 1665, 1.62. Okay, so very useful. Very useful for this mathematical calculation again. And eval has many useful functions. Let's add one real quick now. How about I round it, right? Because here the kilobytes field, I don't like these, like 10 digits here. I just want to show 2 digits. So it's simple. What you want to do is you can add another eval, and then you are now overwriting the existing field round, right, of k bytes, comma 2. Now it's rounded. Okay, so it's important to understand you can overwrite the value of a field using eval. You can also create one. Okay, but you need to change them like this, because because this k bytes is actually being used in this command, you need to have the k bytes first in this command. So that's how chaining works. Okay, so this is a very simple example, but you can start to see the power of this already in manipulating the values in your search results. Okay. Okay. So now let's look at a more detailed eval example. So like I said, eval has many functions that you can use. One of the functions is case. So what I want to do is I want to create a field called a category. I want to categorize the severity, if you will, or the various errors that show up in my web server log. So what do I mean by that? So let's actually look at the data first. Okay, so as you see, we have various statuses, 200, 200 here. Well, let's click on status. Oh, by the way, if you click on status or any field, and then click on the selected here, by default it's no. Click on the selected here as yes. So what happens is Splunk will show it at the top under selected fields. So it's easy to, get to it regularly, easily. Not only that, it adds the selected fields to every event right here. Okay. So this can be useful if you select the field. So now what do I want to do? See, if I create a report saying that I have 1,200s, 500 404s, and like 50 500s. It may make sense to technical people, but let's say you want to really show this in a to a different audience, but they want to know how many requests are successful, how many are erroring out. So how will you create that kind of intelligence using this? That's where eval comes into play. You can create a category field and then assign a category to that event based on the value of status in that event. Okay, so how do I do that? So pipe eval, I'm going to give a new name, category, equal to, now I'm going to use the case function. Now case, if you have some development background, it's used to compute various logical expressions, and based on the results, you assign certain value to the variable. That's being assigned to the case statement. So I'm going to do case, and then logical expression here is status equal to 200. If status equal to 200, I want to assign the value OK. Okay, comma, if the status is greater than, let's say, 200, well, let's do 300 because that's the 300s are redirects. I'm just going to stick to 400, greater than or equal to 400. Comma, the value to the error the category field should be client error. This generally means the user typed in the wrong URL, etc. And then status is greater than or equal to 500. Oh, I think I want to restrict this here further. Status greater than or equal to 400 and status less than 500. Okay. I hope this is clear enough to understand. And the status greater than or equal to 500 would be server error. And then finally, as a catch all, so if none of this logical expression resulted in true, I'm going to give it, this is a standard practice in Splunk, 1 equal to 1. So this is always going to result in true. That's how you create and catch all other clause. I'm going to say not applicable. Now, this might look complex, but it's really running a bunch of logical expression using case statement and then assigns a value if that logical expression is true. Okay, and you can start to see the power of it. In runtime, you are looking at the status value and then computing a category. So let's see what happens. Okay, here it is, category. So we have OK, client error, and server error. OK is 86%. And if you want, you can also add the redirects, which would be the 300 statuses. See, now you can imagine this is a much better way of producing visualizations, right? Just count stats, count by category. Visualization. And this is fine. And my favorite for this type is bar chart. Go with this. Okay, so that's how powerful Eval is. Now, the top and rare, we already saw an example, but let's rerun this just to complete it. The top vendor ID, on field equal number. Let's go to statistics tab. So here I'm looking at the vendor ID and the number of times the vendor ID appears in my search results. Okay, I am not showing the percentage. The rare will be the inverse of it. When we run this, this will catch the vendors that are sleeping and not doing anything. Okay, so these would be the vendors that have the least number of sales. Here, of course, it assumes that if I see the vendor ID in an event, it's a sale event. Okay, you may have to filter the data accordingly before you run this command, calculating the statistics. Okay, and of course, just like let's do this. Do this rare. My bad. Okay, rare is got it. I pasted the top again, and you can also do rare and then the limit equal to 5. That'll also work. These are the guys that are the least active vendors. Okay, so in this case, you can easily create a report and then find out the poorly performing vendors based on the number of sales. Okay, now let's dive into another variant of eval and stats. Remember, I told you stats can do the aggregations on data. You can mix stats and eval in one command because remember eval is used to compute something, and you can use eval to compute something, and then you can run stats on top of that, perhaps to find a count of those. So I'll give you an example of that. This can come in handy too. For instance, you can get stats, count, but here I'm going to provide an eval statement, eval, and then you can actually provide an expression, status equal to 500. Okay. Now, when you do this, you do have to rename this field. Remember, eval always ends up creating a field. And so what you want to do is you want to say as server errors. Okay. So this is, maybe it's as simple as just using the status 500 here and then doing a stats count. That will work too. But I want to give you this option because eval is very powerful. You can do a lot more than this, right? You can go or and blah, 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 but may not be very intuitive here before the pipe. Okay, so let's run this. Stats. No, status is correct. The wrong source type, of course. Okay, so 733 server errors. Okay, so now let's look at Timechart. How is Timechart going to be useful? And this is again a very important command. Let's say you want to plot the throughput of your web server. How many requests are coming in? Okay, so so what this means is you're simply going to plot the count, the number of entries in the access log. So you can do pipe Timechart. Now I want to use a span field here. Span equal to, let's say, 1 hour. So what this means is the Splunk will aggregate the data based on the aggregate function I'm going to provide on an hourly chunk, right? So here, count. If we simply do this, the Splunk, you see the first column is underscore time. It's the time on that event, right? So because it's 1 hour chunk, you can see the 1 hour mark. So this marks the beginning of the time. So 18 means, so this record is from 18 to 19. Okay, that's what this record means. So let's go to visualization. Pie chart is not the right one. Let's go to this guy. Okay, so when you do a line chart, now things are much clearer. So this is basically a time chart of my access log entries. Again, this intelligence is extremely useful. You can see, you can tell someone that if the incoming traffic spiked at a certain point, but right now you can see that it seems like it's up and down. Right now, so this is the total count. Obviously, you can do something like this: status equal to 5-star. Right? This would be all server errors. So I can rename it something like this as So now I have a graph of all the server errors. Okay, great. So now let's look into other gentleman's question about Eventstats. So stats is fine. What does Eventstats do? So here is a major difference between stats and Eventstats. Stats will just give you one line of output unless you are splitting it by a certain field, right? Unless you have a by class. So for instance, you can do something like stats count, right? I'm not splitting the results. So all I'm going to get is one row, okay? If you have a by here, by something, then it will be split accordingly. Event stats is something that you use to compute some statistics and add it to each event of the output. Now, why? That's why the name event. Now, why is this useful? In some graphs, it is useful to show the values in each event. I'll give you an example. Okay, so let's say you are calculating let's go back to the throughput example, right? Time chart.